It is finally tournament time for the 2023 disc golf season. In today's episode of the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast, we drop the top 5 things you must do before your disc golf tournaments in 2023. Let's get into it right now. Welcome in, everybody, to the Chain Clankers Disc Golf Podcast presented by Upper Park Disc Golf. They have the best disc golf bags in the game. They have a wide variety of different bags. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new player. Trenton is showing off his shift on the
empty.
YouTube right now. It's completely empty. It fits upwards of 18 discs in the main compartment. Horatio's playing with some toy. This is a fantastic ad read to start the episode. So it doesn't matter. If you play with toys and you're not taking disc golf seriously, then you can get a shift, and it's going to be great for disc golf, as well as it's going to be great for going out and just having some beers with the boys out on the course. Trenton is showing off the Rainfly that all the bags come with. These bags, you can also get the Rebel, which is the most expensive option, but it's the tournament option. It's what you're going to see all the pros use. It's awesome. Trenton and I both use them and love them, and you can get the perfect amount of discs in there, as well as plenty of storage. And then you can even get something like the Pinch Pro, which is a little bit more for the newer players, but it's got some awesome side pockets for those beers. And if there's one thing we love on this podcast, it is beers on the disc golf course, and we think that Upper Park supports us in having those beers on the disc golf course. Trenton, again, is showing some liquor on the YouTube. This ad read has gotten out of control. Hopefully you're still... He's got cherries. Oh my gosh, what does this guy have? Meanwhile, you can use promo code Clankers10. Save yourself 10%. It supports us, and it lets Upper Park know that we sent you over there, and we really do appreciate that. We do make a commission off of these, so it helps us keep the lights on, keep the bills paid, and keep amazing content coming for you. We want to continue to make amazing content for you, and we can do that with your help supporting us over at Upper Park. Let's talk tournaments, boys and girls. It's 2023. We've got the very first Disc Golf Elite Series event going on right now as we are recording this on Thursday night. By the time you listen to this on Monday, we will already have some champions on the Elite Series. And we want to talk to you about how you can get better at disc golf tournaments. We've got 5 things you must do before your first disc golf tournament in 2023. We think that these are going to allow you to play better this year, and that is the goal. Let's bring in the 2 co-hosts who have been causing mayhem to start this episode. Trenton and Horatio, how are we doing tonight, boys?
Hey, I'm doing great. Apologize for making the ad read about 20 seconds longer than normal, but I feel like I added some valuable content, so can't wait to get this show rolling.
Yeah, and just for the people that are listening and not watching, the toy he was talking about is a D&D mini that my coworker painted for me. I bet a lot of our followers, listeners, probably play D&D, so it's pretty cool there. Yeah, shout out to Gelatinous Glizzy. Sometimes he hops in on YouTube comments.
I love that.
Nice.
I need to play D&D. Let's play sometime. I've never played, so I need.
Have you guys both played D&D?
Just with at work we've played it, but it's fun. You have to have a lot of imagination. Quentin, I don't know if you would do well.
No, I wouldn't. I'm also scared to play D&D.
Don't be
I mean, I've
scared.
watched Stranger Things. I've seen what's happened when people play D&D. So that's a game that I stay far away from, especially because my little peewee brain cannot get over all the things you have to do for that game. Whole lot of rules, probably a whole lot of reading. I'll tell you what, I went to a bachelor party this last weekend, and we played board games and stuff, and I had to read. And oh my God, my reading skills are not good, guys. I struggle to read, especially late at night when my eyes are a little droopy and my contacts are going in and out. I cannot read. But you know what I can do? I can help you get better at disc golf and improve your game so you can have fun and dominate your tournaments in 2023. So let's just get started off with number 1 on the 5 things you must do before your first disc golf tournament in 2023 is don't try to fix your form the week before the event. That is what the off season is for. The off season is when you put the work in, you put the time in to develop your form and fix all the things that you want to. You can make that list in the fall time of, hey, here's what I want to accomplish this offseason. We've talked about it on this podcast before, and you work at that during the offseason. I'm not saying you can't continue to work at those things during the main season and when you're playing tournaments and leagues and all of those things. What I'm saying is, if you're going into tournament week with the expectations that you're going to fix 3 things in your form, those are bad expectations. You're putting way too much on your plate, and you should not be doing that. You should just be focusing on putting. I think putting is the number one thing to focus on the week before the tournament, because you're going to have at least 18 putts during the tournament, and you need to feel confident in your putt. So if you can put up 100 putts a night 7 days before the event, that's 700 putts before the tournament. This is a math
Checks
podcast. Someone check me if my math doesn't check out. But, right, if you can put up 700 putts in a week before the tournament, your putter is going to be feeling so good. You're going to have a ton of confidence when you go out there and step up on the green, because putting is so mental. So we want to lock that in, and we want to drive home putting. If you are trying to change your form,
is that made or
go
just
ahead.
Practice? 700.
Practice. 700 practice putts. If you want to take it to the next level, you can make it 700 made putts if you really want to.
Don't wear
if you
yourself
really are
out,
dedicated,
though.
have the time, blah, 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 blah. But I think if you go into your tournament week with the idea that you can fix X, Y, and Z in your form, you're setting yourself up for failure. And what's going to happen is you're going to be out there, and maybe hole 1 through 3, you do the things that you worked on that week. Well, now you hit a tree on hole 4. Now you're questioning everything you're doing in your drives, in your approach shots, whatever it is. And now you are going back and forth between your old habits, what you used to do. You can't find any consistency. You can't find the groove. You're just going to be mentally frustrated, and it's going to hurt your disc golf game.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the one thing I would like to add here, since we hammered down on practice putting, like our buddy Logan Harpool told us a couple episodes ago, if you haven't checked that one out, definitely go check it out. Do not practice the exact same putt every single time for all 700. Make sure you're doing at least 40% of them, so that'd be 40 out of your 100 in staggered or different standing type of putts. I think this is huge, because let's all agree here that how many times do you actually get to putt the exact way that you practice the most in a round? Maybe 8 to 10 times, so maybe half of the time. And half the time you're in some awkward staggered position with a tree right in your hind end, and you can't get comfortable, and you have to just kind of, You don't have to do that for practice putting, but you got to try to get in those weird, awkward spots. You saw it today on the coverage. I think Gannon Burr was on a knee, and he had to putt uphill. Of course, he made it from 40 out. But still, the point is practice putts that you aren't always going to be in when you're doing it as well.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about not changing your form, that applies to both, putting and driving. We're particularly talking about driving, but also don't, if you're a straddle putter, don't show up and you're like, man, today I'm not feeling it. You're warming up, you got there a little bit early, you're warming up, and you're not making putts because maybe you're a little bit nervous. So you're like, I think I'm going to go, stance putt. Don't do that either, because, I know I've definitely done that before, showing up to a tournament, and I'm going to try a different putting style today, and it definitely ended up worse than if I had just stuck with what I normally do. So this goes both ways, stick with what you know, with what you've been practicing, and in the long run, it's probably going to turn out better. It's just, like taking a test in high school, if you kind of just go with your gut, how many times did you change your answer on a test? And then when you got your test back, you realized you had the answer correct the first time before you erased it and changed it. It's the same exact thing, kind of just go with what you've been practicing, go with your gut. You might not perform how you would like to, but you're probably going to perform better than if you change stuff last minute.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I think if you go into with a plan of, hey, I'm going to putt straddle, then you putt straddle. You don't get to hole 9 and you're like, well, this hasn't been working, so I guess I'm going to switch it up. I think you can make minor tweaks, right? Like if you're doing something a little bit wrong or a little bit off, yeah, of course, you're going to fix that little bit of a tweak. But like you're saying, Horatio, you're not reinventing the wheel. So if you're somebody who, like Trenton is saying, and I think we all should be doing this, if you putt straddle, maybe 70% of your putts are from the straddle position, maybe give 20% from staggered. Maybe give 10% from a knee, right? Because if you give yourself those 20% from the other way that you normally putt, now if you have to do one of those on the course, you're not intimidated by it. You're not thinking, oh, I'm going to miss this because I never practice this, I never do this. You have the confidence that you've done it before. You're not just automatically switching over, reinventing the wheel. You're just being prepared in case you have to do something different. I really like that shout from both of you guys there on that one. I think everyone can take something away from that because putting is so mental. Don't get in your head about it.
Before we move on, keep going, this one, I have a question on this. When do you think, or at what point do you think players or professionals quit working on their form and just focus on their game? Because, a lot of players we think of on tour, like top tier, world-class professionals, we think of them and we kind of know what their form is. So, they're not changing their form every off-season. They might be working on certain things or practicing certain things, but they've been using the same form for years, some of them decades, like some of them you can think of Eric Oakley, he has a very signature form, and some of the other ones, they're not as unique, but they still have their own form. So at what point do you think people just quit working and changing their form and focus on their game and practicing with the form that feels natural to them and then takes them to the next level? Do you think people change their form way too much instead of trying to find out a form that fits them and kind of works for them and just starts to focus on their game?
I don't think I've thought about that a lot, but it's kind of interesting because I'm going to kind of pull off baseball here, right? Like there is a certain way that technically, if you're a pitcher, gets the ball from the pitcher's mound to the plate the most efficient. That's what all the coaches are going to tell you to do. But then you look at college, high school, MLB, AA, doesn't matter what it is, not everyone pitches the same. And so I think you can apply that same analysis to disc golf. I think there are certain things that you have to get right, but overall, you can kind of tinker with a lot of things. And I think a lot of newer players, us three included at some point, look at our form and try to just overhaul the entire thing. I think it's more of a slow, gradual, like, okay, this next 2 months, whatever it is, I'm going to fix my off arm, my non-throwing arm, its position, the way it comes through. Okay, the next 2 months, now that I have that down, I'm going to work on my brace. Like, I think you need to do it slowly until you get to a point where it's like, I look on tape, I can point out, this is correct, this is correct, this is correct. I don't think you should be overhauling it every 2 months. It's more of a slow, gradual, like, thing that you can continue to work on. It's just why baseball hitters take, hits off the tee every day, even if they're in the MLB. They don't have to do that. They got to the MLB, they're good, but I think it's just kind of driving home those principles that they've worked on along the way.
I agree with that. And I think as far as the pros go, instead of focusing on their form, I mean, yes, they make tweaks in the off season, and they do that every once in a while, right? When they have months off, and it's not very many months, but it is months. When they have months off, they do work on form and whatnot. But in my opinion, I believe the top level pros are focusing on mastering one or a couple types of shot, whatever it might be. Maybe they're mastering a 370-foot freaking turnover, that goes, just slowly fades with their buzz or whatever it might be. And I bet you they are going to the field or going to a course and throwing, because, they have 20 to 50 of their favorite discs for practicing. They're going to the field and they are literally just hammering that shot out. And then once they have that mastered and they can throw it basically on demand, they'll switch to a straight shot or they'll switch to a hyzer or whatever it might be. That's what I think the top level people are doing to get to that next level, to be the most consistent players and win world championships.
Yeah, I think that at some point, I think that definitely will take certain players to that next level. I think we see a lot of new players especially. I think it makes sense for new players, to be working on the form, changing things up, trying to figure out, because it definitely doesn't make sense, if you're throwing and your max distance is, 200 feet or whatever, if that's all you can get, you definitely need to do some work on your form because you're not going to be getting birdies. So it makes sense for you to be working on your form, trying to perfect that, clean it up, make it to where it's natural and consistent. But, I think some players, if they can get their distance to it where they can easily throw 350, maybe even 400, I think at that point you almost need to stop focusing so much on your form because you are getting that distance. I think over time it'll clean up and become more efficient. But I think at that point, once you have that distance, it's more important to work on those shots like you're talking about, because you see players who can throw that distance very well, but they can't throw a nice approach shot or they can't throw a good turnover because they're still working on getting that form perfect so they can get 450 or 500 feet, which is not as necessary as really good approach shots or a really good sidearm, or you know what I mean?
Yep.
I also think that, sure, you can throw 450 in a wide open field with no obstacles and a favorable wind, but how many courses and how many holes on those courses do you have that? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you're saying, get to somewhere where you're comfortable, especially if you're someone who it's not like, hey, I'm going to go be the next Paul McBeth. If you just want to be good at disc golf, be pretty good in your area, play some local MPO events, really, master those courses, master different shot selections. If you can hit a tight tunnel gap 250, that's better than throwing 450 in some cases. Because if you can throw 450, but all you do is play woods courses, I don't think there's a whole lot of value in being able to do that. I think having multiple shot selections, being a well-rounded disc golfer, is important to you getting better at disc golf. Are we ready for number 2?
Agree more. Yeah,
on
let's hit it.
The top 5 list? Okay. So, number 2 on the list is you need to play 1 to 2 practice rounds on the course and the layout that the tournament is going to be in. If you cannot, the day of the event, try to walk the course backwards.
Watch out for flying discs.
Yes, before the tournament. Watch out for flying discs. You will definitely be an obstacle.
People might not like
the reason for this, yes, that is definitely a fair warning to put on this one. Maybe the night before, the day before, when there's not as many people there, you're able to do that instead. Like, let's say you get off at 6 o'clock, go hit it real quick, whatever. But the point of this is you want to be familiar with the course. I don't think you want to be in a situation where you're surprised at what the next hole is. How many times have you played a brand new course and then you played it again and you did better the second time? Because you know the layouts, you know kind of where you want to land, you know what shots to be throwing here, what hazards to look out for. Where if you're playing the course blind, you don't have those kinds of data points. Literally look to the best players in our sport. They put in 3, maybe 4 practice rounds before an event on the course and the layout. I think the layout is critical. So for example, us here in Wichita, Kansas, we can go to Oak Park. It's got 4 layouts, I think, 4 main layouts. If you go play the short pads, but the tournament is going to be a mix of short and long, you're not really helping yourself. You're only helping yourself on maybe half of the holes. So understanding what the layout for the tournament is and getting a practice round or 2 on that, just so you have some confidence in yourself, just so you can have some idea of what the course is going to look like. And if you can't do that, we talked to Ron Converse, who gave us this tip about walking holes backwards. Even if you walk the hole forward, stop at the basket, turn around, and look back at the tee pad. You might see different lines than standing on the tee pad that allows you to get to the basket in a more efficient and smart manner. I think doing those 2 things can definitely help you in your tournaments in 2023.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely, something you see in all sorts of sports, Formula One, like we like to talk about, or any other sport where people try to go through and practice it. And I would say even on top of that, maybe you don't have the time, or maybe you don't know what the layout is going to be, or you're driving from out of town and you don't have a chance to get there, but you know the course. or even if you finish playing the course, another thing I would say is, on top of that, practicing it a couple of times, is go through it in your head. So if you're sitting at work, bored out of your mind and you have a few minutes, or if you're maybe not driving home, or maybe you're having a hard time falling asleep, some point where you're just relaxed and you have some time to think, go through the course in your mind. Go through what discs you want to use, what discs you plan to use, and try to visualize those shots. If you've played it before, visualize how the shot would have gone to been a better shot. Visualize yourself making those putts. Get your mindset, your mind almost tricking it to the point to where, you've seen these shots before, you kind of have an idea, and it gives you a confidence. So the next day or whenever, when you go to play, you somewhat have seen yourself execute these shots and execute these holes the way that you want to.
Agreed. And let's also not forget about the beautiful little thing that's on your phone that if you don't have, you need to have, called, can't see it, it's called UDisc. Definitely jump on.
Not a
sponsor of the app, of the pod, but doesn't matter at this point. Maybe it does matter. Whatever. The point being, you can get on there and you can look at the this is going to be, especially for if you've never been to the course, so you're traveling from out of town or whatever it might be, you can see, as long as it's in there correctly, of course, so there is a little bit of variables if the layout is in there incorrectly or the distances are wrong. But you can get on there and you can see the distances of each hole. You can get a relatively good top-down view if it's dogleg left, dogleg right, if there's a tree in the middle of the fairway, whatever it might be. You can, decide if there's going to be a little good landing zone on this 780-foot par 4 so that you can, whatever. Point being, don't forget you can jump on UDisc and check out the exact distances or relatively close to the exact distances and the layout if you are not able to go to the course and physically walk it or physically play it.
Question for you two before we move to number 3. In the tournaments you have played, how many of those have you played blind, and how would you compare those blind tournaments to tournaments where you've played that layout before? Like, have you seen yourself play better at events you've played the course before? You know how it works.
Yeah, so definitely have played much better at courses that I have played before. And that is because I went and played a higher level, I don't know about higher level course. I went up to Indiana to visit a friend and we played in the tournament, and there was 2 courses on this piece of property. It was awesome, and I did not do well because I had never played any of the courses. I had never played in Indiana, which there's a lot more trees and a lot more hills there, which makes a difference when you play flat earth golf like we do. Well, at least in Wichita. Some of the courses in eastern Kansas aren't as flat. But point being, definitely played a lot better on courses that I physically played first, and I did not do any of these tips, and it was a bad move. So definitely learned from that experience to jump on. That's where my UDisc tip came from. Jump on UDisc and look over the course extensively, not just kind of glance over it. So
yeah, no, I don't think I've played any blind because I've only played local tournaments, but I know some people that have played tournaments blind and they do really well. You even hear about some pros, playing courses blind, like they just shut up and played and they did really well, didn't get any practice rounds in. And I think there's a little bit to that because they have no expectations. Maybe they do know the holes. They play the course blind, but maybe they have an idea of what the holes are. And so they don't have an exact of, okay, this is what I have to do on this hole. I have to use this disc and it has to go here and I have to do this. I practiced it like this. I did it yesterday. I have to do it again. And so you have a lot of these expectations of, I did it in my practice rounds. I have to do it again. Or I didn't do it in my practice rounds. I have to get it today because today is game day. And so, I think some of those people that have those really good rounds where they show up and play blind, they don't have any of those expectations or standards. So they're able to play and just kind of have fun. So I think, even though this didn't make our list, I think there's a little bit to that. I'm not saying go play the course blind or the tournament blind, but I'm saying take a little bit of that nature of playing it, just having fun and kind of not having any expectations, letting everything go. Because, kind of once once the gun goes off, everything you practice or whatever you did, it's out the window, and it's game time, and you just have to focus on that hole at that time and just play. So I think that's kind of what happens when you go play a tournament blindness. You have nothing else but just the hole in front of you.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think maybe we'll bottle some of that up, and I feel with maybe the last point on this list, we might be able to hammer that out a little bit more. But let's get to number 3 on the top 5 list of things you must do before your tournaments in 2023. This one is practice like you play. If you are somebody who gets to the course 15 minutes before you're going to start your round, you get 10 practice putts in, stretch a little bit, and all right, you're ready to go. Keep some of that same routine when it comes to tournament day. If you get to the tournament 2 hours before and you're like, okay, I'm going to do 45 minutes of stretching, and then I'm going to do 30 minutes of putting, and then I'm going to play 9 holes, and then I'm going to come back, you are just setting yourself up for so much mental exhaustion. There's no reason to do that. You're going to be going into the first hole 2 hours more tired than what you could be, right? You've been standing around on your feet. Maybe it's cold. Maybe it's super hot. Maybe it's rainy and now all your discs are wet. Whatever it is, you've exposed yourself to the elements for 2 hours. All you've done is kind of maybe put yourself in a bad mental place because you don't already do that. Maybe you hit a tree on the 4th hole because it's the hardest on the course. And now you're like, oh, well, that was the last hole I did. The last thing in my mind is me hitting that tree. So I think you want to practice like you play. And I'm not saying don't get there and give yourself time to do a warm-up. What I'm saying is don't go in and do 10 things that you never do before your rounds. If you putt a little bit, okay, yeah, putt a little bit. Personally, I like to get to the tournament about an hour before my tee time. When we all go play, I'm probably the guy who gets there about 15-ish minutes. I give myself 15 minutes-ish to warm up, and I always wish I would give myself more time to warm up, because when I get to the tournament an hour before, what I do is I kind of walk around, I say hello to some people, I'll give myself 10-ish minutes putting, okay? So that kind of gets me in there, and that's what I do when we all go play just a regular round. Then, I'll stretch a little bit, make sure I'm checked in, and maybe I'll throw 18, 20 shots max. And they're not max distance shots or anything like that. It's literally just to get the body loose and make sure that I've thrown a couple of shots before it's time to go on the first tee. Because if you're somebody who, when you're playing these rounds with your friends or by yourself and you notice, man, my first 5 holes, the throw doesn't really feel too good. I'm not really locked in yet. And then, about hole 6 or 7, you're really feeling good. Your throws are crisp. Everything's kind of coming together and gelling. Then you need to get yourself to that state for hole 1. Otherwise, you just threw those 5 holes away. And you could risk injuring yourself if you try to go out there and put everything into the first hole and then you kind of get hurt. So this is one where you want to take that step back, realize how early do I really want to get to this thing, give yourself enough time to do enough of a warm-up to where you're loose and ready to go when the gun goes off and it's time to tee off on hole 1, but don't be there for hours on end being like, I'm going to get a full practice round in before the first hole of the tournament, or you're going to putt for an hour and a half and that's going to magically fix your putting, or anything like that. I don't think that actually helps you. If anything, I think that puts you in a bad mental place.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I would just kind of go to, I'm gonna give you guys what I think works best for me on my tournament rounds. Quentin kind of told you what he did, gets there an hour early. I get there between an hour to 45 minutes early. Unlike Quentin, he throws shots. He might play some holes. He didn't say that. I try to play 2 to 3 holes, and I try to kind of focus on where I think I'm going to be on a couple of the more challenging holes. So yes, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm not trying to throw bombs. I'm just trying to loosen up, trying to do all that. But I like to go to the holes that are a little bit more stressful for me, I guess, and try to put myself in the position I think I'll be in and work on my upshots or work on a couple of my putts. That can kind of put the unrealistic expectation that, I have to do this when I get to this hole. But at the same time, if you kind of if you think that's where you're going to be and you practice the shots, I think it's a good way to practice. That's what I do personally. And then when I go practice putt, I don't overdo it, because there's definitely some people I've seen at tournaments who literally get 150 to 200 putts up beforehand, and I don't think that is a good idea. I think if you if you practice 100 putts a day, that is one thing. That's not going to affect you one way or the other. But if you usually get to the course and do about 30 to 40 practice putts, so you putt for, 10, 15 minutes, do not double it and do, 100 to 150 putts or 30 minutes of practice putting, because you're just going to get in your own head, and I think that's going to end up being worse for you. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add on this one. I think pretty straightforward. Kind of just make a routine, kind of what works for you. Definitely, not showing up super early. I would also say the same to, don't show up just last minute. Don't get any putts in. Don't get any practice in. Don't be the guy that shows up, with 5 minutes and just jumps straight into it. Because, if that's normally what you do in normal rounds, because a lot of people, for casual rounds with buddies, that's what we all do. We show up and we go right to the hole and we just start playing. So for a lot of people, that is routine. So, maybe for some people, it's not the worst if, they do kind of change it up a little bit come tournament day. But I know what you're saying, don't take it to the extreme because of nerves or because of over preparation, but definitely have some kind of preparation if you have none.
Yeah, I love it. Number 4 is understand expectations and allow yourself to have a mistake or two. The reason we bring this one up is, and Horatio talked about it a little bit earlier, was expectations can be good and they can be bad. If you birdie hole 7 out on the course every single time you play it, and now on tournament day you don't get that birdie, you can kill your mental game by having that expectation. I think you need to, and something this is my baseball coach has said this all the time, was so what next pitch? So what next hole, right? So what next putt? So what next drive? You hit a tree on 13, oh well, move on from it. And having those expectations of, well, I expect myself to finish first because every time I come here I shoot 5 down. It's cool to challenge yourself. I think that's good. But I think when you put these expectations on yourself and then something happens that allows you to not hit that expectation and your game immediately gets flushed down the toilet and you're unable to recover, that is a bad thing. And so something that a pro on the podcast had told us before was, allow yourself to have a couple of mistakes. Understand you're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious. This is not a normal round with your buddies. As much as we all try to say it is, or it's just you against the course, you're probably going to have those butterflies in your stomach. It's okay. We're all human. We all have those. It's just who can better mitigate those, right? So you need to understand, and maybe you set this with yourself of, hey, I'm going to have 3 times this round that something is not going to be as expected. Maybe you miss that 10-footer. Maybe you hit a tree off the drive. Maybe it's a bad upshot. Whatever it is, allow yourself to have 3 or however many, whatever your skill level allows. Maybe it's like, hey, I'm going to have 9. I'm going to have 1 every other hole. Maybe I'm going to have 1 every single hole. Maybe it's just the 1. Whatever you determine, you can set that for yourself. Allow yourself to have that, because I think mentally that's going to help your game a lot. Because if it's hole 11 of that round and you haven't had your mistake yet and you have a mistake, you can be like, hey, that's okay. I'm ahead of pace right now. I still have 2 more mistakes before this round is over. It's not, oh my gosh, I just missed this putt. How could I do that? Now I lost a stroke on this guy, and how am I going to recover? And you're not worried about all that. You're able to just flow and play your game. And I really think mentally this is going to help a lot of players out there.
Yeah, so I definitely agree, and this is the hardest part of my game personally, and probably most people's game, is the mental side. The tip of giving yourself an expectation to have some errors has been fantastic for me, and I'll admit it's very hard to do even when you try to come to terms with it before the tournament round or any round. You try to accept we all are amateurs on this podcast. Most of you guys listening are amateurs, I'm sure, but pros make mistakes too. They all come to the same conclusions, right? There's always gonna be something that happens on the course. As hard as it is to so what next pitch, or so what, as Quentin like to brought up, so what, next putt, so what, next drive. It is very hard to do, but the faster you can move on, throw that behind you, and don't look back, the better you're going to play. That I'm not really adding much to what you said, Quentin, but I just want to hammer that out. It's very hard to do, and we all understand that it is probably the number one issue for 99% of disc golfers out there is the mental set.
Yeah, I think definitely sometimes players with the same level or, within 10 to 20 points of rating similarity, I think what it comes down to is mentality and kind of who's going to crash quicker. Let's say you take two players who are similar skill level and you're playing around. A lot of times it's going to come down to the one that's going to win. It's the one that's going to hold it together the longest. Sometimes not necessarily who's the better player, but who can not collapse after a bad putt or, not just implode on themselves after a bad drive. Because once that happens, it's just a snowball. And so you have two players like that. It's whoever can mentally stay stronger, stay calm, and get through the round and just focus on their thing and let the other person collapse, usually is the one that's going to come out on top. Very rarely, the person that is just having a fit and just mad about this and mad about that and, just going on and getting upset about their game. Very rarely does that help them and come out as a win in their round, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it kind of leads us into number 5, so I'm just going to hit it. We can continue this discussion, is you need to stay calm. Understand everything is not going to go your way. You are not perfect. You're not going to have the perfect round. Bad things are going to happen to you. How do you handle those bad things, right? And it's one of those things where we've all played a tournament and had somebody on the card who is throwing a temper tantrum, is upset, not talking to the group, and I'm not saying you have to talk to the group, but like if you miss a putt, there's no reason to, start cursing, and there's no reason to then throw your discs at your bag or start yelling or talking during someone else's putt. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, right? Have I had instances where I have missed a putt and I have been angry? Abso-freaking-lutely. But do you think that helped me in my tournament? Hell no. That's why I can stand here and admit my faults, that I have done these things before, and it's not like my tournament went well for me. Bad things happen. I was a bad card mate, and so we all have to try to just learn and move on from those instances, right? You don't want to be labeled as the guy who, when they see that you're on their card, everyone else is like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. We have to play with this guy? I can think of a couple that come to my mind right now that I don't want to see their name when we play tournaments because I know it's going to be a bad time. And remember, we are out here to have fun, especially if you're playing in these local C tiers, B tiers, A tiers, and you're not an MPO, your living is not disc golf. We are out here to have fun. We gave our money to have fun, so enjoy your round, enjoy the competition, and just go out and have fun. Don't slam your putter when you miss. Don't start yelling and cussing everyone out. Just chill. Vibe check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yeah, you hammered that one on the head. And I think one thing I would like to add is if you are a guy who decides to play a tournament and you just play league night once a week, yes, you're playing a lot more than some people, but you're not out, you're not able to putt every night and you're not able to go to the field and practice field work once a week. Don't go out to the course and get upset because you missed a putt that you feel like you should have made when you haven't put the time in. So just go out there and have fun. Like Quinn was saying, just don't have too high of expectations. And if you're not out there, putting in, 10 hours a week and putting and driving, and you get mad because you miss your first putt, you just woosah. You shouldn't get mad anyways, but don't have too high of expectations and just go out there and have fun, like Quinn was saying.
I would say, Quentin definitely only gets upset depending on the score. Like if we're playing a casual round, if he's winning, the mistakes aren't that big of a deal. But if he's losing, it's definitely getting to his head, and he gets upset a lot more if he's losing, whether as opposed to when he's winning.
Agreed.
Honestly, I'm really glad that you said that because that makes so much sense. I can think of the Colwich tournament last year where I think the first round, I literally couldn't buy a putt. I mean, it didn't matter where I was putting from. That sucker was not going in the basket. And I feel like because I had fallen back, like it did kind of hurt me mentally, and maybe I put a little bit more pressure on myself or whatever. And every time that we play, that's 100%. If I'm leading and I have strokes to lose and I make a mistake, it's not that big of a deal. We'll get them next time. But by golly, man, if I'm trying to hunt you down and I make a mistake, that definitely hurts my mentality, which is something that I can work on for tournaments this year. And I think that is a really good shout that, try to not allow the score to, impact your mental game. Just go out there and try to give it your all on every single shot, because every single shot, every single putt is independent of the rest of them. So put 100% effort into the one that is coming up. And yeah, that was a really good point, because I can think of in my tournament rounds, even if it's not putting, even if it's driving, and it's like, I can also think of the Keeper of the Chains where I'm playing first 2 rounds, awesome. I'm in 4th in the last round and one thing didn't go my way. It's like, well, I just lost a stroke to him. I lost 2 strokes to him. And I start trying more, and it's like, oh my gosh, I just lost 3 strokes to everybody. And then it's just more and more and more, and snowball. I never was able to mentally reset like we're talking about. And I definitely think that's something I
guess, it's kind of just like
on.
that thing where it's easy to do things when it's easy going, but it's hard to stick with it when the going gets tough. It's definitely easy to have a game plan, these tricks that, we're teaching you guys, and all these things that you're going to focus on, and you're playing decent. It's nice and fun to do all these things, but when you get 3 bogeys in a row, or you get a double bogey, 3.
Hey, 3 or 30?
You said 3.
Oh, I thought you said 30. It's like, damn, that's a bad tournament round, man. If you got 30 in a row.
No, yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Or 3 bogeys in a row, or you go OB like twice, and, or this stuff just starts to pile up, and it's just going bad. It's very easy to forget everything. Everything goes out the door, and I think that's when it counts the most. When you're making birdies, you're hitting your lines, you're making putts, these tricks, it's good. They got you there. Maybe they're getting you to get those birdies or whatnot. But these things matter the absolute most when you just went OB and now, you have no chance at par. You're looking at maybe best a bogey, maybe a double bogey, or your disc just went in the water, or you just 3-putted, or whatever it is. Worst case scenario, that is when this stuff is going to be needed the most. I think for me, that's definitely something I try to keep in mind. And I try to, whether I'm winning or losing, I try to have kind of a similar mindset, if I'm winning or I have strokes, kind of keep that same killer mentality, or, kind of try to stay humble, if that makes sense. And if I'm losing, having the similar mindset of like being like, all right, we'll get it, just stick with it and it'll come.
Couldn't agree more, fellas. I think we hammered out the top 5 things to get yourself ready for a tournament in 2023. And I don't know. What else you got?
I have one more point. I'll close this out on this last point.
I didn't have anything to add.
We talked to a local here, Duck from Duck's Flying Disc, right? And he was telling Trent and I when we were having a meeting with him a couple months ago that, if someone, this is an example for the brand, and, we can use this for your tournaments, right? If someone comes in our YouTube, our Instagram, or whatever, and just bad-mouthing us, trashing us, calling us idiots, it happens. I have the DMs. It's kind of funny, to be honest. But when those things happen, like, if you take that, like, personally, and like, you allow that to affect you, like, you got to think about it. Like, this person and whatever their life is like, this, like, got them, like, going. You know what I'm saying? Like, this means everything to them. This, where to you, it's like, we have other things going on in our lives. So when we're playing these tournaments, we have other things going on in our lives. Don't let this one missed putt ruin the rest of your day. Don't let this one bad drive, this one bad day of disc golf make you feel like you're a horrible disc golfer, you should never play, or now you're mad at your spouse, or you're mad at your kids, or you just take out your frustration on everybody else, right? Like, Horatio, how many tournaments when we first started playing did we leave that event and we were like, wow, I suck at disc golf. I'm never playing this again. I'm never doing a tournament. I felt like it was every single one. If that is your mentality, leaving the course on the end of tournament day, then we got to fix your mentality. You know what I'm saying? That is a horrible mental place to be in. Remember that this is a game. We do this to have fun. We want to get better. That's why you're still listening. Fair. That's very fair. But, like, remember, there's other things outside of your life that matter also, so don't allow one bad putt, one bad drive, impact that, kill your day, whatever. That's all I have to say. Anything else before we get out of here?
Play for par, and you'll end up on the podium.
Yeah, I think it's don't lose the passion. I think this last season we saw Nico have the worst. He was kind of made an example. Definitely yelling at refs is a big no-no. But I think he just wears his heart on his sleeve, not, defending his actions or anything. But I think he is the prime example of someone that has put everything in their life, sacrificed a lot of things into disc golf. And, I think the root of a lot of people's frustrations or me leaving a tournament mad because I did so bad is not really mad because, I suck. I know I sucked. Going into it, I knew I sucked. But it's, you for the people that do practice, you practice so much, you play every day, you buy discs, you buy the bags, you watch YouTube all the time, like you consume so much of it, you put so much time and effort into it, so you go and put yourself to the test, and a tournament, where you kind of see what you can do and you don't do well, it hurts, it sucks, you can't make a 15-footer even though you practice them in the garage every single day, and it sucks and it's tough. So that's because you have passion about this. So, like, if you go do a tournament, you do bad and you don't care, you're like, whatever, oh well, like, who cares? Maybe take a step back. You need to take a break, reevaluate definitely what's important to you, why you're doing things. Just move that passion around, turn that anger into something else, as opposed to leaving like, I hate this, why did I play this tournament, I suck. It should be, I need to go home and practice. Where did I do bad today? My upshots, my putting, I need to go and throw 50 upshots this week or 100 putts this week. Turn that anger, frustration into something positive so that you want to do another tournament and you want to see improvement. Even though I don't have a PDGA membership yet, I see why people get those, and for ratings, because it allows them to see that improvement. And so people do tournaments because they want to continue growing and continue seeing that improvement in themselves. So I definitely get it. So you guys, good luck this season. If you guys are going to do tournament, best of luck to you. Hopefully you guys do well, get some wins. Let us know if you guys get some W's, take some photos, tag us in those, and we'd love to share those. And, you guys are winning, we're winning. So that's what we're out here for.
Yeah, I mean, I literally can't agree with what you're saying there more, Horatio. And like he was saying, good or bad, tag us in your content. Send us direct messages. I promise I look at those and I respond. It's not just a random bot. We are here to build that connection and relationship with you guys. We want to see you guys and gals succeed. So let's get on this journey together. Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you're like, man, maybe I should work on fixing my form before I have my first tournament in May or whenever it is, check out last week's episode where we talked to Overthrow Disc Golf, and they gave us the top 5 must-dos in your form or you'll not be able to improve in disc golf. You're going to want to check that one out if you want to be on the path to improving your disc golf game. Make sure to leave that like rating if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Let us know what you thought of today's episode, and we will see you guys next week.